Well, okay. Welcome everybody to Power Shift, Stopping Line 3 and DAPL, Youth Power in Treaties. I'm excited to be here. Bonjour, Anin, Joseph Mataluta Vital Indigenous. Hello, my relatives. My name is Joseph Mataluta Vital. My English name is Red Bear, and I am calling from so-called Minneapolis, which is the occupied lands of the Dakota people. Many of the speakers are also calling in from the settler state of Minnesota, which is the ancestral homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe people. But we also recognize that other people are calling in from other occupied lands, and we recognize the need for tribal sovereignty to be given more consent and autonomy over their lands, whether that be, well, it definitely just needs to be land back. And before we continue on with our program, I want to welcome everybody to this space in a good way. And I'm thankful to have Wabanu here to do that with two songs. And also note that this event will be recorded. So for you shy people on the phone, you lucked out, but for those of you who just rolled out of bed, I can tell. Go ahead, Wabanu.
Bonjour, and then my gonna do Wabanu Benes Indigenous Cause magazine do them. Go Babigani Kagan do Japan Itashanda. Ashini and the Sobunigiz, the Minway Lang, Iknakoyan, Jetanish Nabe Moyan. Hello, my friends and relatives. My name is Wabanu Benes. I come from the Eagle Clan. I live on the White Earth Reservation in Natawash, and I'm 12 winters old, and I love to learn and celebrate and teach my language. And I'll only be singing one song for the first beginning of the event, and then at the end I'll be singing a closing song. And yeah. And so this song is meant to honor our women, and I thought I'd sing this song because they have that connection to the water. Let me wait.
Miigwech Wabanu, and thank you for honoring our women like that and connecting their power to the water, because we know that both have the ability to create life, and that is a sacred power to hold. Um, and again, welcome everybody to this. We will be talking about Line 3 and DAPL. And in this program, we will be having discussion on the big picture, on their similarities and some of their differences, with as well as like a treaty overview, because we understand that oftentimes with our relatives and our allies, treaties is something that is not really understood. And it goes farther than just, our white allies being treaty holders themselves. And I'm excited to learn more about what exactly that means and other things as well from Dale Greene. And we also are excited to host the DC Runners, youth from Standing Rock, as well as from Minnesota, on the current events that transpired on April 1st, as well as historical things that took place during the No DAPL movement. So I welcome everybody, and I am truly honored to sit with these amazing speakers. And I'll open it up to Jim Doyle.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Doyle, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a volunteer with MN 350, and my day job is a professor of physics at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm calling in. I'm here tonight to provide some background on 3 pipeline projects that we'll be discussing tonight: Keystone XL, Dakota Access Pipeline, or DAPL, and the Enbridge Line 3 project. The first slide, please, Andy. So here we have a map with the 3 pipeline. You can see they cut across the midsection of the United States. The Keystone and Line 3 project would both transport tar sands oil from the Athabasca oil sands in Alberta, Canada, to refineries in the U.S. Keystone to a refinery on the Gulf Coast, and Line 3 to a refinery just across the Minnesota border with Wisconsin. The DAPL pipeline transports fracked oil from the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota to a refinery in Illinois. All of these projects present grave risk with regard to Indigenous sovereignty, climate change, and oil spills. But I'll first begin with some good news. On the day that he took office, President Biden rescinded the border crossing permit for Keystone XL. Now, this pipeline, which is part of a larger existing Keystone pipeline system, would have resulted in increased tar sands oil production by 510,000 barrels per day. According to Lakota activists, thousands of ancient and historical cultural Indigenous resources would have been destroyed across native treaty lands during construction. Federal EPA concluded that the pipeline would present significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions. And in the Biden executive order, we read, and I quote, "The significance of the proposed pipeline for energy security and economy is limited. The United States must prioritize the development of clean energy economy, which will in turn create good jobs. Approval of the proposed pipeline would undermine U.S. climate leadership by undercutting the credibility and influence of the United States in urging other countries to take ambitious climate action." End quote. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we see in more detail the DAPL and the Line 3 routes. The areas in orange are reservations, that is sovereign native territories. And you can see in both cases how close these pipelines run to those areas, with Standing Rock, the large area on the border between North and South Dakota. With regard to DAPL, the situation is more uncertain than Keystone. The pipeline crosses near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation and passes under Lake Oahe, an important water source for local Native American tribes. Construction was started on the pipeline in 2016, and despite massive protests at Standing Rock and elsewhere, a number of legal challenges and vacillation by the Army Corps of Engineers on whether or not to prepare an environmental impact statement, the needed permits were granted. Construction was completed and commercial operation began in June 2017. Unfortunately, the pipeline continues to operate today despite not having a proper environmental review and adequate consideration of tribal concerns. Currently carrying 570,000 barrels per day of crude oil, the pipeline operators want to increase that capacity to over 1 million barrels per day by the end of this year. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland are on record opposing this pipeline while they served in Congress. The good news is that the courts have determined that the federal permits issued by the Army Corps of Engineers for the Lake Oahe Missouri River crossing are invalid, and the Corps must conduct a full environmental impact statement. The court cited inadequate consideration of worst-case oil spill scenarios, the reliability of the pipeline leak detection system, operator safety records, impacts of harsh winters on spill response, and undetectable pinhole leaks. In fact, the pipeline leaked 5 times in its first year of operation. Although the lower district court also ordered that the pipeline be shut down and emptied while the environmental review was underway, the appeals court did not agree and left it up to the Biden-led Corps of Engineers to determine whether oil can continue to flow while the environmental impact statement is being prepared. They so far have declined to do so, and the issue is now back at the district court, which might yet issue an injunction to halt the flow, which is, if it's going to happen, is expected to occur in early May sometime, but we don't know exactly when. So unfortunately, the Biden administration passed up on an opportunity to make what seems to me at least a common sense decision to stop operating a pipeline that has not undergone adequate environmental review and Native American cultural impact review. And even if the flow is stopped, we still need to be vigilant. Completion of an Army Corps environmental impact statement will not guarantee that this pipeline will be permanently shut down. So whatever happens in court in the next few weeks, there's still much needed engagement on DAPL. Construction on Enbridge Line 3 pipeline has been underway since November 2020, and the pipeline is about half finished. Water protectors up in northern Minnesota are being harassed and arrested for their peaceful opposition to this climate, environmental, and tribal sovereignty disaster. It is very important to understand that the Line 3 project is not a replacement for the existing Line 3, despite the prevailing narrative by Enbridge and Line 3 supporters. According to the regulatory record, this is a new pipeline that will carry 760,000 barrels per day of new tar sands oil, with the 360,000 barrels per day in the existing pipeline rerouted to other pipelines. Indeed, Enbridge has already increased oil flow on other pipelines that exceeds the current flow of Line 3, according to a complaint filed by Honor the Earth to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. Tar sands are the dirtiest oil there is and have somewhere between 15 and 30% more greenhouse gas emission than conventional oil due to the very energy-intensive mining and processing required. The greenhouse gas emissions from new Line 3 project will exceed the total electricity and transportation emissions in Minnesota each by a factor of 5, and add the equivalent greenhouse gas emissions of 50 coal-fired power plants. Ceded tribal lands on which Indigenous communities depend for food, water, and spiritual sustenance are threatened by disastrous oil spills, and there's plenty of evidence in the record that the oil spill assessment for this project was woefully inadequate. It truly boggles the mind that construction on this project has been allowed to proceed despite the finding by the Minnesota Department of Commerce that Enbridge never demonstrated any societal need for that oil. Instead, Enbridge claims that if they dig tar sands oil out, the markets will somehow appear. In fact, the administrative law judge in the regulatory proceedings concluded, and I quote, "It is a bitter pill to swallow, however, that the need for this project is to primarily assist foreign oil producers in transporting their products through and mostly out of Minnesota," end quote. The tribal, environmental, and climate impacts of this project have been largely ignored in the permitting process and remains a black spot in the state of Minnesota's environmental and social justice record. The Department of Commerce put it well when they testified, and I quote, "At a high level, in light of the serious risks of existing Line 3 and the limited benefit that the existing line provides to Minnesota refineries, Minnesota would be better off if Enbridge proposed to cease operations of the existing Line 3 without any new pipeline being built," end quote. In June 2020, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission granted the main permits known as a Certificate of Need, the route permit, and the approval of the final environmental impact statement. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency approved the Army Corps of Engineers water permits in November of 2020. These permits are the subject of a number of various court challenges at both the state and federal level by the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians, the White Earth Band of Ojibwe, Honor the Earth, and the Lax Band of Ojibwe, Friends of the Headwaters, Youth Climate Interveners, and Sierra Club. A major milestone in these cases occurred a few weeks ago when the Minnesota Court of Appeals heard oral arguments on the challenges the PUC permits. There is some hope there. The judges asked some hard questions of Enbridge and appeared to express some skepticism on whether they had demonstrated need for the pipeline. And the court now has until June 21st to make a decision on whether or not these permits are legally valid. Meanwhile, construction is continuing, and since, of course, we don't know how the court will rule, it is imperative that the Biden administration step in. The ask is simple, I think. Apply the same skepticism to Line 3 as they did to Keystone and order the Army Corps to conduct a federal environmental impact statement where tribal impacts, climate change, and the threat of an oil spill are rigorously evaluated. And that was not done adequately by the state of Minnesota. In the meantime, construction on Line 3 must be halted. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of some of the vital stats and where things stand with the pipelines, which I just talked about. And I just to conclude, I think both DAPL and Line 3 these projects share a disregard for Indigenous rights. They both threaten the environment with a major spill, and they're both climate change disasters. If Biden wants to be the environmental president, he needs to start here. And although the administration has taken some important steps in correcting the egregious environmental policies of the previous administration, DAPL and Line 3 are the environmental and social justice elephants in the room. Thank you.
Am I frozen? Or can you hear me? Okay, my picture is frozen. All right, I'm just gonna roll with it. Thank you, Jim. And it's especially harrowing when this isn't the only instance in which the United States has ignored tribal sovereignty for the sake of, corporate or industrial interest. It's just now, with the existence of social media, we can really see the social and environmental injustice that we, quite frankly, Native people have been talking about for decades. There have been spills since the construction of some of these pipelines. And, when we talk about this nation to nation, agreement between tribes in the United States, these treaty partner relationships, and for those to be kind of put on the back burner when they're supposed to be as high as, as important as, the Constitution of the United States, it's just, when does it stop? And, it begins with holding conversations like this and holding the United States accountable, because we have not gotten justice. Justice would be these pipelines or projects would never have happened in the first place. But what we can do is ensure a greener future for our youth and for future generations. And so I am excited to announce Dale Greene to talk more about treaties and what exactly those mean.
Oh, wow, me great Benace. Thank you for the song. That was very impressive. Bedonahkwaad and Disneykas. Wangnan do them Bedonahkwaad Manomaniki and Dunjaba. Ani gum meesing in Dunjaba. I hail from the island surrounded by wild rice over there by East Lake, Minnesota. I was born in Duluth and currently living in the Duluth Superior area. The story I'm going to tell first, before I mention the treaty, is the creation story that my family shared with me when I was young, and I was made sure that I understood it by being told it over and over again. One of the things that, on understanding the treaties, in my opinion, is understanding who we are. In Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe Ojibwe are spiritual beings. Everybody I'm looking at on my screen, I perceive as spiritual beings, because we're all spiritual beings within these mortal shells. And I don't mean to tell someone else how to believe. It's just what I'm seeing. When we were first placed here on Turtle Island, our creation story talks about us being like a wisp of smoke. And being like a wisp of smoke, the great mystery, Gichimanadu, had sent down what was called the Ishkabewisug, those spirit helpers that prepared this Turtle Island for us to be able to inhabit here. And one of the first things that they figured out is that being like a wisp of smoke, we weren't going to fare very well here. So these incorporeal supernatural beings, these Ishkabewisug, they went around and figure out what they needed to do. So they went and asked the four-legged, the fish, everything that had a spirit that was alive, even the water, the plants, the trees, the fish and everything. And they petitioned them. And they petitioned them to help us survive on Turtle Island. And, it came down to that those spiritual beings agreed to forfeit their flesh, their being, to give us substance, to give us these mortal shells, and to give us the food, to sustain us in this mortal existence or experience. The plants, the medicinal plants and everything, they have spiritual beings, and they also petition and ask them. And the consensus was that they came out with this kind of an agreement or covenant, however you may want to believe it, that they would do that to give us our substance and our bodies and our mortal shells to experience the great path of life on Turtle Island. They agreed to do that as long as we never forgot their sacrifice. That's a sacrifice that continues today. The Anishinaabe Indigenous people, we always offer our asema when we're going to do something, or we're going to take something, or use a plant, or the trees, or the brush, or taking water. Water is a living spirit, a living being. There's several different sacred places where that water place is just really sacred. And in that covenant, these spiritual places would help us as long as we remembered their sacrifice. And that's why we offer that asema. That's why we put out that tobacco, and that tobacco is something that we believe helps our prayers, prayers of thanks and use, gets back to the great mystery, Gichimanadu, the creator. For me, that's important to understand that covenant. Now, modern day here, that we have the Bawam and Eniwag, the Sioux, Lakota people, and the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe. But that essence runs deeper. Before, modern history, there was the people called the Paleo Indians and Mandan Indians in this area and region. And I cannot say that their essence isn't within us today. That we are, the people that intermingled with them, and that we're the great children of them. So it's always important that that we get an understanding of our creation story, to understand why we're fighting for that sacredness of water. But before the treaty area, before the treaty era of making treaties, the Indigenous people were living here. And my family, those people that made sure I understood things, talked about the water being medicine. The flora and the plants that grow here created oxygen and was medicine. And when the old world Europeans came into Turtle Island or North America, they were coming from the old world, London, France, the Dutch, and they were coming from old world countries that were pulling themselves out of the what was called the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, where they had basically deforested their lands. They were depleting the soil for the crops they grew. The runoff that was happening to their soil erosion, was making it really difficult. And some people may even theorize that it contributed to the great plagues that were brought in before the explorers came to Turtle Island. From what I am told, those voyageurs and explorers that came here to the Great Lakes region, they were coming here and they weren't always in the best of health. But something amazing happened to them as they would float around in a birch bark canoe and dip their little cups in the water and drink that pristine water. They would smell the oxygen that was being created by the ancient flora and plants that were growing, and it rejuvenated them. It quite literally became a medicine that made them fall in love with this region and this area, and of course the people that were here. It just changed how they seen this world and what they were coming from. Long before the 13 colonies rebelled against the the great British Empire that the sun had never set on in that era, the Indigenous people were making treaty agreements with first the Dutch, the French, and the British. And these agreements, were international agreements. And as the 13 colonies, started getting taxed and didn't have that representation in Britain, they didn't like that they were taxed without representation. And they never had, history will say that they never really had the intention of a revolution. They just got ticked off and wanted to rebel. And through this rebellion, they struggled quite a bit. And in their struggle, they realized that they couldn't be fighting the world's greatest superpower and succeed if they had to worry about their Indigenous neighbors. So they sought out those Indigenous people on the Atlantic coast there and started talking about making treaties of friendship. Not all Indigenous people agreed to make those treaties of friendship, but enough did. And some Indigenous people opted to stand with the British, and some opted to go with the fledgling rebellious 13 colonies. I've done enough research to understand that it was the Indigenous nations that entered into those international treaty agreements with those 13 rebellious countries, gave them an international status, that the 13 rebellious colonies then went and asked France to help fight France's enemy, who was the English. And they used our international treaties as proof that the fledgling 13 rebellious colonies were starting to make an impact. And somewhere during that time, those rebellious people started thinking or believing, we can win a revolution. We can become another international nation. And they did. It was the help of those early treaties that gave them that international recognition as a nation. And, you know, there's a real murky start to the Declaration of Independence, where they called us savages and some really harsh names for the people they just made peaceful treaties with. And when they were writing the US Constitution, in Article 1, Section 2, has this really cool wording of who can be selected representatives to Congress. And the cool wording is excluding Indians not taxed. There's some also derogatory language about Blacks being 2/3 of a person or whatever, and just really derogatory. But the excluding Indians not taxed was in reference to the people that they made international agreements with. The notion being that you can't include people of their own nations on their own national lands being counted to select representatives to Congress. A few years later, I think about 60 some odd years later, maybe 70 years later, the Civil War happened, and the 14th Amendment came along in 1865, 1866, that made people born in the United States citizens. And that 14th Amendment that's usually considered how immigrants come to the United States and their children, when they're born, become citizens. It's got that same cool wording in there, excluding Indians not taxed, because someone had it in a what is that, institutional memory, and they were still making treaties with the Indigenous people. So those treaties mean a little bit more when you can understand how they came to be and how we were many and they were few. And now, you know, it's the other way around, where we're few and they're many. But those treaties mean a lot more. You know, the Indigenous people here, we didn't get anything but retained what little we could. When we look at the water in the youth, what you're actually fighting for is to ensure that medicine is passed on to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that pristine air that the flora creates continues to be able to do that the pristine waters are not only here for the wild rice and the Indigenous people, but everyone that enjoys the advantages of drinking water. The sports fishermen that want to teach their children and grandchildren the sports fishing. When I was looking at the maps there of line 3, if you were to look at line 3, just south of Leech Lake there. That's wild rice country. That's where I come from. And if you look at the mid-central part of Minnesota, and if you were to go, say, 100 miles straight up, and if you looked east, you would see the waterway going towards Lake Superior, the St. Lawrence Seaway, right out to the Atlantic Ocean. If you would look south, Juan-de-Nung, you would see the Missouri and Mississippi rivers heading south towards the Gulf of Mexico. And if you would look west, Miagawag, you would see the Red River Valley in those waterways heading north to Winnipeg and right out through the Red River Valley waterways right out to the Hudson River. You'd almost see like the heart or arteries of a heart that's providing that life-giving water in those sacred directions. That's what's at stake here. That's what the importance of understanding that covenant of our creation story. The treaties. We didn't get anything from the United States in the treaties. What the treaties actually did was we retained and had things recognized. I see many future treaty rights fighters that are doing the fight right now in being water protectors and standing up for stopping Line 3. What I would ask you is to look at, especially if you want to become somewhat familiar with treaties, is one of the first ones I would ask you to look at is the 1825 treaty, I think it was Prairie du Chien, where the United States government came in and history says that they brokered a peace agreement between the Sioux people and the Chippewa. Now, I don't know if that's true, but the treaty recognizes that the state of Minnesota, what would become the state of Minnesota, there was two jurisdictions. One was the Dakota people. Lakota people retained everything south of the Minnesota River, and the so-called Chippewa people, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, retained jurisdiction in everything north of the Minnesota, what would become the Minnesota River. At the conclusion of the 1825 treaty, the Ojibwe, Anishinaabe Ojibwe people said, wait a minute. There's not enough of us Chippewa here to agree to this so-called 1825 treaty. If you really want to get all the Chippewa together, you come back and you explain what went on here to the rest of the Chippewa. So in 1826, that delegation then once again met with the Chippewa, and it was reaffirmed that the Chippewa people, the Anishinaabe Ojibwe, retained the jurisdiction in everything north of the Minnesota River. And all the treaties that came afterward, jurisdiction was never talked about or sold or gave away. The United States government has this thing called the canons of construction on treaties. Part of that is how they deal with the indigenous people. I was taught the way the Indians understood. Those old people made sure that I understood that the people before them thought they were pulling a fast one on the United States when they were so-called selling the land. They thought they were pulling a fast one because the concept of land ownership was foreign. You know, you can own a hand drum, you can own the clothes you're wearing, you can own your personal objects, but you can own a phone, an iPhone. But the concept of owning land was foreign. What are they gonna do? Box it up and take it with them when they go? Because these people were transitory. So the you know, from my teachings, the Indians understood that how do you own land? When those people died, you know, how does it pass on? So we have to understand the way the Indians understood. The word I would ask you to remember is construed. That it was construed the way the Indians at the time understood. When we were making the 1854 and 1855 treaties, it was understood they were selling the land only. They understood that they would retain the right of occupancy. They would retain the right to make a living, have a living off the waters, off the woods, off the land. You know, the so-called treaties were made with transitory people who may have been over in Wisconsin during a springtime and setting nets and spearing fish. And as the fall came, they may have been down around the East Lake Mille Lacs area wild ricing. The winter came, they may have been up by Red Lake, Cass Lake, Cedar Lake, camping in a winter camp surrounded by cedar. The next spring up by Fond du Lac or other places tapping maple sugar. And when the treaties were being negotiated, I like to ask people, who were the people before the 1854 treaty? Who was the Fond du Lac, Lake Superior Chippewa people? Who were the non-removable Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe people? How did they self-define themselves? A treaty is kind of like a Polaroid camera snapshot. It's a picture taken of a particular moment in time and gives names, a geographical name to those people who were there at that particular time. But because of the transitory seasonal living lifestyle, may have never ever returned back to a particular place that at one time they were part of a treaty negotiation, and never really quit that transitory lifestyle until you know, the 1920s, 1930s, and they were still moving around. White Earth is a good example of that, because White Earth has people from Michigan, Turtle Mountain, Red Lake, Menominee. They have them from all over. That they ended up there because of various different things that were happening. I would really love to go into more detail about the individual treaties, but I want to give the other speakers behind me their chance to talk. One thing before I end, though, I want to share this with you young people, you young warriors. The industrial age, the petrochemical era of fossil fuel is coming to an end. That era of using fossil fuel is ending. in the new era of something different, whether it's photosynthesis, whether it's solar power, whether it's geothermal power, whether it's something else, is going to happen in your lifetime. You're going to have children and grandchildren that are going to look back at this petrochemical era and say, what the hell were those people thinking? And that is something of pride that you can hold. What you're also pushing forward is the recognition that no matter what happens, this petrochemical era, like the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Timber Age, the Coal Age, the Industrial Age, they're coming to an end, and a new era is before us. And you're going to see when 99% of the cars will not be running on fossil fuel. I think there's some great pride in being able to see over the horizon, in that you are pushing and pulling something new and different in ending this petrochemical era. So there's a lot of hope and inspiration you're bringing to us that had to live through this petrochemical era. If you ever think of those old time movies about London, there was always this thing that London was foggy and rainy. In the last 20 years, you can call it global warming, but the fog and the rain has subsided. In England now, for the first time in 500 or 600 years, they're having more days with sunlight than they've ever had in the modern history. What they found out was all the coal that they were burning was what was creating those great clouds, that fog, and preventing that sun. So as they moved away from the coal, so went their fog and their rainy weather, and they're actually seeing. So there's hope. I think I'm really way over my time. So thank you for listening to me. I wish I had more time, but miigwech, you're all very inspirational. I'm very proud to be able to share a little bit of time with you tonight. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Dale, yes, I'm seeing the cheer and the hand signaling from all these great faces here. And I guess because I am the one speaking, I will say, yes, you are just as inspirational, but thank you for shouting out the youth and for the future generations to come, and for really grounding this conversation of why we fight, because it's, our past is the future, to shout out Nick Estes, and it's our teaching that's going to ultimately save the planet. But it's ironic because it's our teachings and our culture that this settler imperialist system has been trying to wipe out for hundreds of years. And speaking of youth, I'm excited to have another conversation with the DC youth, Standing Rock, and those coming in from Minnesota as well. Let's welcome Sadie and Silas.
I'll go first. Hamdakayapi, my name is Cadee Peltier. I am from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, as well as the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians. I'm 16 years old. I am currently serving as the secretary of the Standing Rock Youth Council. My English name is Bear Necklace Woman. So that's me. Silas, what about you?
My name is Silas Neeland. I am 13 years old, and I am fighting in line 3 from the camp where I live, fighting for the wild rights in the water and our treaties.
And it is so great to see you both. I remember at our last conversation, it was like in anticipation and in the midst of the planning for the DC event that you guys spent actually traveled to and carried out. There was some spicy things you couldn't really talk about at the time, but yeah, what happened April 1st? What are some highlights? Remind us.
I'll kind of talk about the beginning of the day a little bit. So really what it was a gathering of youth from all over the Midwest who are all fighting the same fight to get rid of these pipelines that are desecrating all of our lands and waterways. So we all came together in Washington, D.C. We spent about a couple days before actual action on April 1st. And we decided on April 1st because it was the 5th anniversary from the founding of the Sacred Stone Camp here in Standing Rock, where our fight against DAPL began. So we began the day with a run from the National Mall to the Army Corps of Engineer building. We had a couple runners that did that. And then at the Army Corps of Engineer, we had a rally where we had speakers from many different tribes and communities come and talk about their fight with pipelines and everything that they've gone through and how they continue to push through everything. And it was honestly so amazing to listen to everybody speak because even though we all come from like different places, different backgrounds, we're still all fighting for the same thing. And then we presented 400,000 petitions to the Army Corps of Engineer. That was, they were all stating that they want DAPL, Line 3, Keystone XL, they want all these pipelines to be shut down. So that was a really powerful moment. Silas, do you want to talk about what we did for the rest of the day?
Like Katie said, we had speakers where I got the honor to deliver me, Love Hopkins, and Carson to deliver the petitions, and it rained for like 5 seconds, which sounds crazy, but it was so powerful at that moment, just giving to them and it rains. And then, you know, we got done speaking. We with a 250-foot black snake, we did a march down to the front of the White House where some of our people killed the black snake with in front of the White House. We talked a little bit. We did a round dance. And yeah, pretty much wraps it up.
And Silas, can you just talk a little bit more on just what made the rain coming so powerful? And then you know, can you talk about like the crowd? You know, what was it like with that? I saw the pictures and it was like this huge black snake that people were kind of carrying around. Can you talk a little bit more on that?
Yeah, it felt powerful because right when me, Love, and Carson were handing them the petitions, it rained out of nowhere. It felt so cool because we're fighting for the water. This is the whole point of our fight. And that felt powerful. But when we went to the White House, they had tripods. There was 2 of them, which is pretty cool.
Wow. And yeah, just to be there in community and in that celebration for like the common goal, like you said, it, you know, you guys might have come together as organizers from the Midwest, but just to have so many people come around either locally or from across the US for the specific goal must have been extremely powerful. Looking at the pictures, it looked amazing, at least from that end. And then like, so that was the first day, delivering 400,000 signatures and then having this rally. Were there other things that transpire after the fact?
During our time in DC, we did get to meet with a lot of different groups. We met with tribes from DC. We had one tribe welcome. I don't remember what the name of their tribe is. I'm so bad at that. But they welcomed us and they gave us a really big meal. It was awesome. And then we also met with some Black Lives Matter youth from DC. That was actually the same night. We got to share a meal with them and talk with them. Yeah, gosh, what else did we do? I don't know. It was so busy. Everything was such a blur. There was one thing that we did that day that I did forget to mention. In between the petitions and our march, we staged a die-in. So our youth that came there from Standing Rock, Minnesota, Iowa, they laid on the stairs and they died to represent people that we've lost from fossil fuels and also COVID-19. And that was like really, really powerful. Like seeing, like, we always say the youth are our future. And so to show that that could potentially be our future if things keep going the way that they're going right now, it was really, really powerful to see. So I was on like crowd control. I was standing on a stage. So I actually got to like see everything, and it honestly made me really emotional because it was like seeing my peers there and seeing how far we've come, honestly, in this fight that we've been fighting for so long, just to where we are today was crazy.
And then Silas, can you think of anything that stands out in the whirlwind of events that you partook in to share?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just like what else happened after the first, because delivering the petition is awesome, but what else did you do?
Well, right after we got out of the event, I just fell asleep. And then I woke up with my mom telling me, you're getting interviewed by the Hulk. I was like, what? So I was like hurrying up and getting my hair all fixed up. And I hurry up and ran down there with Dallas, Katie, Maya, and Memphis. And we got interviewed by the Hulk, which was pretty cool.
How could I forget getting interviewed by the Hulk? That totally, I just blanked. Yeah, no, that was awesome.
What did he talk? What did they talk about? Like smashing pipelines? Like what was? Like what's? What was that conversation like?
We actually, Mark Ruffalo was in Standing Rock for a lot of, like when camp was still a thing. He was there for a really long time. So we got to talk about like everything that we've done. And we also got to talk with him about how his fight against like fossil fuels started. Because like he didn't just hop in at DAPL, like he had been doing this for a really long time. So we got to kind of talk to him about his history with all this stuff.
That's so cool. Wow, the Hulk. Put that on your check mark, like life goals right there. Man, that is so great. And again, you guys are so inspiring in the work that you do and then continue to do. Upon delivering, those signatures and, lobbying Biden and speaking with tribes, what do you think was achieved, or what can you say was achieved?
So, I'll say that, we just had the hearing a couple weeks ago for DAPL. And for us here back at home, even though the Army Corps and the judge decided to not shut down DAPL, I can say that at least with our time in DC and all this hard work that we've put in, we've definitely brought attention to our movement. And we as the people of Standing Rock have shown that our fight isn't over and that our movement isn't done, because there's still a pipeline running through one of our most sacred waterways. So at the very least, it got the word out there, and you're still seeing, or we're still seeing like news articles, and it's like, that's us. Like there's pictures of us, there's quotes from us, and it's so crazy to see. So yeah, I think that even if we haven't really achieved our goal yet, it was a really big milestone in getting there.
And Silas, do you have anything else to add to that?
I felt like president-wise, we didn't really, but it was so fun. We delivering petitions, we achieved that. We got people's attention that we're here fighting, and I know Biden knows that we were there, but he didn't open his door. He knew. We know that. So I think we did get his attention, but all now he has to do is stop Line 3 and shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline.
And I know we have some photos of the event as a slideshow. Could we get those going just so like the audience can get the scope as like, yeah, I really want to like showcase how Biden definitely knew y'all were there. All right. And then Silas, Cadee, feel free to like add context if like a photo pops up and it's like, oh snap, that's the Hulk.
So that's me. That was our march from the Army Corps of Engineer to Black Lives Matter Plaza. So I was fortunate enough to be like right on the front lines of that march. So this photo was captured, and it's one of my favorites. I posted it on Instagram. I really liked it. And then these are 4 of our young ladies who came to DC with us. The 2 on the far right are ladies from Standing Rock, and then there's me. And then on the left is one of the young people that we picked up in Iowa from the Meskwaki Nation. So she joined us about halfway through on our journey. But by the end, we all 4 became very good friends and are still in touch now. Yeah, so that's one picture that was captured. Silas, do you want to talk about this one?
In my opinion, I did not like that picture because I look all mean in that picture. But yeah, that was me with carrying the petitions. I thought it was like filled with papers, but then it was so cool because it was like a little hard drive, but with like 10 boxes. I was like, I was all sitting there. I was at the point I was like, these boxes are empty. And yeah, so that's why I don't mean like that.
This is one of the pictures of our die-in. So you can't really see the whole thing, but I think I have one at the end, so we'll see that in a little bit. But this is just like a small glimpse of what our die-in really looked like. These are our runners that went from the National Mall to the Army Corps of Engineer building. So they held flags and staffs and everything. There were some really strong Native youth who I think represented us really well in that run. This is just our group picture. Silas, do you want to say anything?
I'm not good at remembering, but all I remember is that we got on the bus and we went over there. I'm pretty sure we listened to a song, and yeah.
Yeah, this was us waiting for the run to start, standing in the National Mall.
That is me and Tara Huska. I was very excited to see her because I was very honored to sing the Nibi song with her.
This is a more wide shot of our die-in, so you can see all of our Indigenous youth laying there, and then our big sign that said Biden Army Corps, your inaction equals our death. We kind of had a really long conversation about what to put on that sign, because we were like, I don't know if it's too blunt, but we were like, no, we're not going to sugarcoat it, because we've kind of been stuck with these things for so long that it's about time that they really have to face what their decisions are, because that's truly what it is. Their inaction is going to equal our death one day. Yeah, and then you can see our snake in the background. Yeah, they had we had those words written on there, and then you can see Biden too. Yeah, he marched with us. And then I think that's the last picture in there. Yeah.
Wow, all of that looks super dope. And Silas, I hope your meeting with Tara was a lot cooler than mine. I kind of fanboyed in like a lame way. And I feel like you're a lot cooler than me, where you're like, hey, Tara, you're a water protector, sup? Whereas like with me, I was like, oh my God, you're so smart and you can talk great. But it's so great. And again, you guys are so inspiring, and seeing the die-ins and seeing you guys talking with the Hulk and delivering petitions, like eternally grateful. Wabanu was crying. I mean, it's rough when you meet your heroes, man. And and so, Silas, you touched on it earlier. He didn't come out, as in President Biden, but he knew you guys were there. There's no way any of that happened without him knowing. And there was great influence, especially in the courts and the work that's going to come ahead. And so it begs the question for me is, how can people who are watching right now, support y'all and support resistance at the pipelines?
One thing that we mentioned a lot on all of our live videos and our videos that we posted on Facebook was that calling the White House. You can't always get through, but if you call early in the morning, we found that that's the time that you can normally get through and leave a message, and just continuing to pressure the administration to shut down these pipelines. Talk to your local representatives about what they think they can do. Encourage your tribal councils to stand with their people and continue to be vocally against these pipelines. It's one thing to just say once a couple years ago, yeah, we don't want these pipelines, but it's really important that our councils continue to actively fight these pipelines. I can tell you that from Standing Rock, if you want to follow along, our fight against DAPL is always being updated and followed on the Standing Rock Youth Council page, as well as Indigenous Environmental Network is another really good Facebook page where things are always being posted on there. So again, that's Standing Rock Youth Council on Facebook or Indigenous Environmental Network on Facebook.
For here in line 3, I would suggest follow there's about 5 camps around Minnesota that are here fighting the fight. And just to add on to that, our camp are hosting a weekly dance party starting May 3rd called Mondays for the Mississippi. So all you guys are invited to it. Everybody's invited to it, the public, and you can go check it out on our page, Minomengon and Wendang. Oh my God, I forgot the last name. And yeah, you guys can go check that out. That would be really fun. And I will put the camp name in the comments.
That's awesome. And then, what's next?
We're gonna kill the black snake.
Okay. Mic drop.
I would also just like to say that, this fight isn't over until it's really over, until all these pipelines are shut down, until we're given our land back, until our sacred lands are given back, I can tell you that our group chat from our trip to DC is still blowing up every day. Tens of messages are just always being sent in there. So there's still actions back home being planned. And, hopefully once COVID gets a little bit better, we can start to have more things like in DC again. But definitely things back home are not slowing down. We're still planning things, even if it's virtually, just social media posts, whatever, just getting the word out. We're not done yet.
And if the youth's not done, then old people like myself are definitely not done. And again, any final statements you guys want to say? If not, it's been such a pleasure.
I'll just say thank you guys for giving me this platform to get out and continue to speak about these actions that we're doing. It means a lot to me to get to speak to people ever. And just continue to support, because like I said, it's not over yet. I know people think that, oh, it's been so long, but yeah, it's been a long time, and we're not slowing down anytime soon, I don't think. So just continue to follow on social media and share posts, and do whatever you can do. Thank you.
And Silas, any closing statements?
I want to say miigwech for letting my voice be heard for about this pipeline. At a 13-year-old, there's so much I can do. So I want to say a double miigwech for, letting my voice be heard, let me speak. So, yeah.
Alrighty, and just like in true Minnesota fashion, I will say goodbye to you both again. But like you said, your voice, y'all's voice matters, because everybody has a role to play in this work. And again, it's been an honor to share space and just talk with y'all again. And hopefully next time, y'all talk with the cool Avenger, Tony Stark. Just saying. Talk to me when y'all talk to him. Thank you guys. And then the next step, because we had this petition delivered to Biden, we have an action step set up for everybody on this call that they could partake in, so that they can have their voices heard. This is it. And we need to remind Biden that we were extremely let down. Not enough has been done. And, promises were made that weren't kept. And so, we heard from Dale and his treaty discussion, in the sense that, there were things put into the treaties where they were interpreted in the way Native people saw the world during the time, but it's been misconstrued in a Western way. There are things you could talk about in these comments. But again, we're just ultimately urging all of you to urge Biden to commit to a fossil fuel-free future. And, in these comments, directly tell him to, direct the Army Corps to shut down DAPL and to revoke the Section 404 permits for Line 3. And do we have the link in the chat for people just to, yep. Or Wanda. Wabadoo. Oh, man. Okay. And then there's that for people to do. And then we are also doing the Not My Dirty Money pledge. And it's just for people to commit to not investing their money or opening bank accounts with these banks that fund fossil fuel corporations, such as, JP Morgan, Chase, or like Wells Fargo, who sucks, like this. And it's really simple, pretty quick. And we'll put the link in the chat for people. First name, last, email, zip, sign, and you're good. And that's how much they've funded. Yeah, it's pretty gross. We have that money for oil, but nothing for like our houseless relatives. And yes, Akila, thank you. And there will be a session tomorrow about the Dirty Money Challenge. And we're at this point in our agenda where, we're opening up questions for the panel. I know Jim is gone, but we have Andy and his expertise on a lot of the small facts and big for a lot of these pipeline projects. And if people got it, drop into the chat. And I'll just open it one more time because I know it's Friday and I had a long week. This week has felt like a month, right? Okay, I'm not the only one, and it's okay, everybody.
Today has felt like a month.
Today alone? Oh, wow. Oh, man. Yes, especially here in Minneapolis. Yeah, the whole town, like Minnesota in itself, held its breath on Tuesday. It was insane. It was the most anxious I've been in a long time. And Olivia, just a lot better. A lot better. And can we just, let's just hold that for a second and just recognize that the decision made on the Chauvin trial was not justice. Justice would be for George Floyd to be alive right now. What we saw on Tuesday was accountability, that a corrupt police system cannot murder people with impunity, that there will be consequences, and there is a demand for either defunding or abolishment or, I guess, reform, if you want to like water it down. And whatever it is, I think we can all agree that something needs to change. And so again, I just wanted to mention that because it impacts us as Native people, and it impacts us as water protectors, because who the heck is tear gassing and pepper spraying us at the front lines? Yeah, the police, so who are they here to protect? Right? Olivia gets it. And now, if Andy, if you can go into a screen share for a word cloud experiment that we're going to do with everybody. And essentially what we're going to do is, a lot of things have been said tonight, and I know it's late, but there are some things you heard tonight that really resonated with you, and we want that reflected in the sense of like, was there something in the treaty convo that you find important for, and that people should know? And the other one is, what words or ideas did you take away from this discussion that you would want to communicate to Biden? And so we're going to put a link into the chat for people to go into. And then you're just going to put like your one word response into it. And then we're going to see all of our great words populate in real time.
Is the link gonna be put in the chat, or should I just look it up?
I'll drop it in here, but best to just follow the instructions on the screen. There's the link, and then I'll put in the code. You can just copy and paste that code when it asks you, and then it should give you some boxes and you can type your thoughts. Spend a moment on this and we'll move to the next prompt. We'll just go to our second question here. You should also see that change on your screen. Oh, I've reached the end of the presentation. Oh, really? There we go.
Ooh, why is protecting water important to you? Ooh, for me, life. Ah, somebody beat me to it. Somebody else is corny. Not just about me. Ooh,
You guys took all my 3 answers.
right? It's so fast. People are so quick with it. It's like the memes that come out, like when something funny happens, it's just the memes. For where it is scarce, that part. We often forget about water being scarce, especially us Minnesotans, where there's so much water, but it's also why we're there protecting it. Mm. Mm.
I'll take the share down.
Okay, thank you,
That's
Andy.
all. Yeah.
And again, in true Indigenous fashion, we go a little late, but you know, I promise you, Wabanu song is gonna make up for it. So Wabanu, why don't you take it away?
Where's my stick at? Oh, there it is. Bonjour again. So, some of you are probably thinking, well, why are we doing another song? There's just 4 guests. How I was taught and how it is in Anishinaabe culture is, when you open a door, you always have to close it. And so if it was just me on this Zoom meeting, I'd still be singing this song. So, yeah.